Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City. Last night was the start of NFL Week 2, and it was two NFC East teams going head-to-head, so getting more into that, as well as NFL Week 2. The football weekend is here. We have Erin Dolan, FanDuel Sportsbook Insider, joining us right now on the phone here on 97.3 ESPN. Erin, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. And you know what? I think I'm doing a little better because last night we saw two NFC East teams basically beat the snot out of each other. Washington was very lucky to come out of that game with a win. And it gets back to something I've been saying this week, Erin. You know, Washington and Philadelphia both have the second best odds right now on FanDuel Sportsbook at plus 340 before last night's game to win the division. And after last night, you just got to start wondering, should Philly actually be more of a favorite to win the division than they are?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question to pose. I mean, I think the line has come down a tad for Washington. They're plus 260, Dallas ahead, plus 125, Birds are plus 320. I mean, people were saying before last night's game, and I was kind of laughing at this, this was like the toilet bowl of all Thursday night football games. I mean, a matchup nobody really wanted to watch. But as we know, the Giants basically let that entire game slip away. If you weren't tuning into that game, the Giants left points on the field. I mean, there was missed passes, there was offside penalties, which ended up leaving Washington being able to have that second chance to attempt that game-winning field goal. But as for the Giants, it's unfortunate because you see in the odds, they moved to plus 750. So they moved pretty far out to the point where you know that the Giants most likely don't have a shot. Whereas before NFL Week 1, when you were looking at the odds, they were the shortest of all divisional odds. So I had made the case, and it's hard for me to say this also, I know, for people, because I am a Philadelphia Eagles fan. I am from Philadelphia. I had said take the Eagles at plus 480 just because the division was so unpredictable. This was also before we saw Dak Prescott play in that Thursday night football matchup. But I think there's still a case to be made for the Birds, especially if they win against the 49ers and Dallas loses against the Chargers in this week too. I mean, Washington, you don't want to discredit them at all, but given that Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to be out for 8 weeks and they almost did lose to the Giants, like we can't take that out of the equation. It's not like they dominated this team. So I think it makes a lot of sense still to find value on the Birds at plus 320. I can't discredit Dallas either, plus 125. I'm just a Philadelphia Eagles fan, so I definitely will not be rooting for them to win the division.
Well, also, really quick with last night's game as well, you know, I'm starting to wonder, I heard somebody else bring this up, so this isn't my original idea, but someone else I heard this morning when I was still waking up was talking about the fact that have people figured out Washington's defense? That was the staple of the team last year. So if Washington's defense is not on the same caliber as they were last year, in some ways you kind of have to wonder, does Washington have what it takes to win the division, considering that they still have tougher games down the schedule?
Yeah, I mean, the matter of the fact is the Giants stink, to be quite frank, once again. I mean, I don't really know which other way to put it. I mean, Joe Judge said in the press conference after, they can't blame it on one particular person, but I feel like the one main theme with the New York Giants is, and you could kind of make the argument for other teams too, being excited going into the season, but it just seems to be the repetition of just a bad offense, bad defense. They can't really get it together. They didn't really seem like a cohesive team last night, not a lot of chemistry. And you can kind of tell that from the press conference last night. I think how Saquon Barkley spoke after the game about that they can't do these types of things. They need to win together as a team. Kind of, I could see kind of the frustration in his voice and on his face of, oh, we really did just drop this game. In terms of their defense and whatnot, I mean, they're 0-2 at this point compared to some of the other teams. I just don't think they really have a shot whatsoever.
Yeah, Daniel Jones now 0-6 in primetime. He's got to face some guy named Patrick Mahomes about 2 months from now, so he's going to be 0-7 very soon.
Yeah, I will say that quickly is that the Giants do cover, okay? So that if you want to bet on them, they're 5-0 against the spread in the last 5 versus an NFC East team. 7-1 against the spread in the last 7 versus NFC teams. They just don't win, but they do cover.
Well, listen, they win you money. They might not win on the field. So it's kind of
yeah.
in one hand, out the other hand kind of deal.
For sure.
Erin Dolan joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. And give her a follow on Twitter at Erin K. Dolan. FanDuel Sportsbook Insider joining us here. We mentioned the Birds. They are currently still an underdog at home, but I've been saying all week, you know, this 49ers team is injured, Erin. They got injuries out the wazoo. It's ridiculous how many guys. I mean, at this point, who knows who's actually going to play on Sunday defensively? And in that case, I'm feeling better and better about the Eagles at Lincoln Financial Field at home, and they may be 2-0, and the rest of the division is going to be looking up at them still.
I agree with you. So I'm going with the Eagles in this one to cover. I got them +3.5 on Tuesday. It's now down to +3. The Birds are going to have that extra momentum, of course, from beating the Falcons. The Falcons are nothing to write home about. They only had 4 wins last season, so that's not too surprising that they were able to pull that upset. But Jalen Hurts looked so good in that first game, 27 for 35, 264 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers. He ran for 62 yards. His 77% completion rate is the highest ever on opening day for an Eagles quarterback. He also has now had 3 career games with at least 250 passing yards, 60 rushing yards, and 1 touchdown pass. So he obviously looked great. Devonta Smith, love him, 6 catches for 71 yards. Again, you can make the argument that it was against the Falcons, but you make a great point with the San Francisco 49ers. They are injured. I mean, running back Raheem Mostert, you have Jason Barrett. They're season-ending injuries. They are not coming back. And last season, it was interesting because, well, not interesting, it was unfortunate. For the Eagles, they were completely injured. Same thing with the San Francisco 49ers. So it looks like the Eagles are way healthier, and they're playing at home, and I feel like that's really going to be an edge in this. Now, something that's interesting is 90% of the money on the FanDuel Sportsbook is on the Eagles' money line for this game, 72% of the money on the Birds to cover, 86% of the money on the over here. Now, given FanDuel's biggest markets, or some of their biggest markets are PA and New Jersey, it makes sense that this would be inflated for our local teams, but people are really looking to back the Birds in this one.
It's also interesting the fact you mentioned how people are backing the Birds. Also, you have to factor in because, let's be realistic, I mentioned this earlier in the week, this is the first time that we actually can enjoy watching the Eagles. Whether you're an Eagles fan or a football fan, there's no drama right now. There's no strings attached. There's no side stuff going on. It's like you could sit down and watch a football game and not have to worry about, if something be on TMZ-ish the next day.
Yeah, I mean, I was never a Carson Wentz fan from the moment he started. I loved that Nick Foles won us that Super Bowl. I actually have Foles in a picture on my wall right now. But yeah, I mean, the drama that surrounded that team last season, I feel like it had to run through that locker room and obviously on offense. I saw a report, I believe it was Lane Johnson, had said something about Nick Sirianni had a press conference the night before, and they all went around the room and shook hands and were like, we're one team this season. And I think I had doubted Nick Sirianni, especially after those first couple of press conferences. I mean, I think everyone did. I mean, people on ESPN were doubting him, but clearly I think I can see the chemistry. Again, we just beat the Falcons. It's nothing to write home about, but it does feel like a different team, a different vibe. And even being in the city of Philadelphia, I think people are ready to, like you mentioned, just sit down, watch the game, enjoy it, no drama.
Now, I am known at this point as a Jalen Hurts guy, partly because I feel like the only person who's defending him half the time. But Jalen Hurts for MVP, is that a bet that people should jump on, considering the fact that he right now, through his first 5 starts, has better passing numbers than Lamar Jackson in his first 5 starts?
Yeah, so I think you make a great point, but really in the MVP market right now, from what I have been given from FanDuel, so Matthew Stafford and Kyler Murray stored up the odds board. Stafford moved from 17-1 to +800. Now one of the favorites, Murray, moved from 23-1 to +900. If I'm trying to find Jalen Hurts right now in terms of the MVP odds, let me just find that quickly for you. But in general, I can't make the argument that he's going to win MVP. It's kind of a tough one for me. I actually had Baker Mayfield winning it, and then, of course, in week 1, he's looking great. Everything's looking good. Patrick Mahomes comes in and completely shows me why I shouldn't have said Baker Mayfield, despite his odds completely being cut in half. But there's always, Jalen Hurts is 30-1 compared to some of these other guys on the board. Some of the favorites, Patrick Mahomes, Matthew Stafford, Tom Brady, Kyler Murray, everybody else is 12-1 or greater. I personally wouldn't put money on Jalen Hurts, even though I'm a fan.
Erin Dolan joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at Erin K. Dolan on Twitter, FanDuel Sportsbook Insider. Also, don't miss each week on YouTube, the Girls Who Bet Show. She is the co-host of that. Erin, let's talk about a couple other games around the league. Let's stay in the NFC East for one more. Cowboys at the Chargers. So I've already been on a record. I think the Cowboys lose this game. I think the loss of La'el Collins and Lawrence. I think it's just way too much. And I think that this Cowboys team, they got the Hard Knocks curse hanging over their head at this point.
I hope that kind of translates into the Colts as well with Carson Wentz, because I think they're doing an in-season one now.
That is correct. Night. Yes, that's. I don't know. That's gonna be torture.
It is. Okay, so Prescott, obviously, he threw 403 yards, 3 touchdowns. They looked great against the Tampa Bay Bucs, but you can also factor in what's known as the Super Bowl hangover and kind of getting into the groove that first game back. As we know, the Tampa Bay Bucs won. They didn't cover, so from a betting perspective, I'm always thinking about who covers rather than who wins the game, which is something that I need to start working on. But in terms of this game, I actually am taking the Chargers to go 2-0 for the first time since 2012. I really like Justin Herbert. I think, he played great in that first game, 337 yards, touchdown pass against Washington football team as well. I had them winning that game outright, which was perfect for me. I did not expect, obviously, the injury with Ryan Fitzpatrick, but even if he wasn't injured, I still had the Chargers winning that. Now, it's going to be, again, a situation with Dallas. If they do go 0-2 to start the season, the conversation will still start around, is Dak Prescott all that to ride home about? Is he going to be, the comeback player of the year? Because he is the favorite to win that right now, despite maybe his team not being great around him. I'm just sick of hearing the hoopla around America's teams. Again, Eagles fans, doesn't help it. But in terms of some of the betting trends, Dallas was 5-1 against the spread in the last 6 as an underdog. Meanwhile, the Chargers 5-1 against the spread in the last 6. Following and against the spread win, which last week they did when they beat the Washington football team. And then in terms of where I'm seeing the money, 82% of the money is on Dallas to win. 91% of the bet count is also for them to win outright money line. 71% of the bets are on Dallas to cover, 93% of the money on the over. So people clearly thinking out of all the underdogs on the board, Dallas could potentially be one. Now, this is overreaction week. We know week 2 is that. In week 1, I bet all the underdogs. I love the underdogs. I love plus money, but I know in this particular week, a lot of the favorites will probably take it home since the underdogs went 12-4 against the spread last week, also won 9 straight. So for me, I'm going with the Chargers.
A couple other games I want to hit on with you here. You mentioned hangover. I think the Raiders might have a hangover for this game coming up versus the Steelers, honestly. I mean, there's a lot of stories coming out of Vegas that they were partying very, very hard after their win on Monday night. So I'm looking at that Steelers team that went to Buffalo, punched the Bills in the face, and I'm looking at the Steelers. I'm thinking, man, this might be a much easier win than the line is telling us.
Yeah, I totally understand why you would think that. And first of all, if you've ever been to Las Vegas, you can't walk into that city without drinking. So that does not surprise me that the Raiders wanted to party after. I didn't think they actually would, but it's funny that you're saying that they could have that little bit of a hangover from Monday. But in terms of the Buffalo Bills, I thought they were overrated from before the season started. I was talking about that, so I'm not surprised the Steelers beat them. For me, I think Big Ben, I can't get behind him anymore. I think it's time to hang it up. For this particular game, I'm not betting on it. There are certain games that I'm just like, you know what, I'm staying away from it. I hate that the line's 5.5. So what I would do in this game is look towards the prop markets. Look to bet the first half spread as well. It's right now Pittsburgh -3.5. You could always take an anytime touchdown score. And then in terms of where I'm seeing the money come in, people are back in Pittsburgh money line. But although 73% is on that, 58% of the bets are on the Raiders to win outright, which is quite interesting. So we're seeing reverse in terms of where the money is coming in compared to the bets. And then 72% of the money is on Pittsburgh to cover as well, 88% of the money on the under. This is just I hate the line 5.5. I stay away from it every single time. I totally understand how you're thinking the Steelers playing at home could easily win by a touchdown. The Raiders obviously were able to have that Monday Night Football comeback win, huge win over the Ravens. But, I mean, they're really banged up, so it's not like they were playing a fully healthy Lamar Jackson and the Ravens team. But this is one of those I would go into the prop markets for.
You mentioned the Buffalo Bills. How do you gauge the AFC East right now? They're all going to play each other this weekend. Buffalo at Miami, the Patriots at the Jets. I mean, how do you gauge this division considering the fact that after week 1, none of them really looked good?
Mm-hmm. I know. The other game I was going to mention that I'm staying away from is the Patriots versus the Jets. You had 2 rookie quarterbacks. I know people are raving about Mac Jones. He's now the favorite to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Trevor Lawrence in second there. I like the Miami Dolphins. I think they're a team that will continue to be upset. All their lines kind of hang around 3.5, which they're always underdogs and somehow always cover. So I usually take the Miami Dolphins. In terms of the Bills, a lot of people are going to make the case that they'll play a lot better. They'll be able to easily cover 3.5. for me, I'm still backing the Dolphins in this one as probably one of the underdogs that I would take. Everyone raves about Josh Allen, and I understand why when you look at the stats and everything. He has some offensive weapons that are unbelievable, but I think that we're going to eventually see negative regression. They've had a couple of good seasons in the past, not being able to make it out of the divisional round. So I think that for me, if I was to bet into the AFC East division winner, I'd say the Miami Dolphins plus 175. The Patriots are in rebuild. New York Jets are in rebuild as well. You can make the case for the Bills, but if you wanted to find value, I think the Dolphins would be where to go.
One more for Erin Dolan from FanDuel Sportsbook joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Chiefs at the Ravens. But Erin, Patrick Mahomes' era Chiefs have a losing record against the spread. So I think a lot of people think the Chiefs are going to win, but are they going to cover versus the Ravens?
Interesting. So I have them to cover. I got them at -3 on Tuesday. So it opened -1. It's now to -3.5. I hate betting -3.5, but some of the games this week I'm just going to take considering it's overreaction week. But in this matchup, 85% of the money is on Kansas City to win outright. 95% on the money is on Kansas City to cover. People clearly have no faith right now in the Ravens being able to do anything. I'm not sure if you saw, but there was a tweet that came out. 8 players are on the injured reserve for them. Meanwhile, the Chiefs have 0 injuries as practice began. So the Ravens are still banged up. The Chiefs also get back Tyrann Mathieu, who missed that game 1 due to COVID protocol. But the Chiefs were able to pull back ahead against the Browns last week. They had a basically dominant second half. Didn't look great in that first half. As for the Ravens, they started out hot. Obviously, the Raiders came back and beat them. Lamar Jackson 0-3 against the Chiefs. So for me, I think the Chiefs can win by more than a field goal, even though I have them at -3. Hopefully that's not going to push for me. But unfortunately for the Ravens, they're just too banged up for me to back them right now.
Give her a follow on Twitter, Erin Kate Dolan, FanDuel Sportsbook Insider, and she joined us right here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Erin, before I let you go, tell everybody about the Girls Who Bet on YouTube.
Yeah, so a show that we just started, Liv Moods and I, is Girls Who Bet. That's on Wednesday nights, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. We basically stream live for an hour to an hour and a half on YouTube. We're also on Twitch, and the point of the show is kind of to give betting advice, go through some of our picks, but also involve, some pop culture. We'll be bringing on guests. So for episode 3 this week, we'll bring on Ariel Epstein of SportsGrid and FanDuel. So that's going to be great. And we kind of just want to open a new market to women that want to get involved in betting and be able to sit and kind of learn it a little bit and also kind of kick back and talk about relevant things in sports and pop culture.
Well, it's a fun show. I encourage everybody to go subscribe, go check out FanDuel Sportsbook on YouTube. That's where they can catch the show, Girls Who Bet, and give Erin a follow on Twitter at Erin Kate Dolan. Erin, appreciate you joining me today.
Yes, thanks so much for having me.